The following is a presentation of the Championship Racing Network.
Crossed Flags, a racing podcast. It's your midweek fix for racing news and information. Brought to you by the Championship Racing Network. Now let's head trackside to join your hosts, Steve West and Matt Nicholson.
Welcome into what is episode number 4 of Crossed Flags. I'm Steve West. Matt Nicholson. Producer Molly is not pictured at this moment in time, and I don't know whether we're going to bring her in on this particular one or not, but as we go along throughout the course of this, yes, there will be the education of young Molly when it comes to the racing world. But either way, we're going to get into talking a whole lot about road courses this weekend, or this week, because of what happened last weekend. And we saw a little bit of it when it came to Formula One. And Formula One is well known when it comes to having a specific idea of don't go off the course. If you do, there are ramifications for it. NASCAR decided that they needed that as well. So we're going to get into that. But first things first, being as it's Wednesday, they're doing a 2-day tire test out in Sonoma. Since we're talking road courses, they just repaved that entire facility, getting ready for racing this year. And we've noted this on many occasions. When you repave a course, you generally have smoothed out all the bumps. You've gotten rid of any imperfections in the track for a little while anyway. That'll come over the course of time with aging. And let's face it, there's a lot of pressure that these cars will put on there by cornering and braking and accelerating and everything.
Quite a bit.
But right now, it's perfect. And the result is
Ross Chastain representing Chevrolet. You had Martin Truex Jr. driving for Toyota, and then you had Josh Berry driving for Ford. You have speeds that are now 2.5 seconds faster at Sonoma.
that's a pretty significant drop in time getting around that road course. And we're going to show you that road course here in just a couple of moments. But the main reason that we're here is because we want to talk about this first track that NASCAR just ran on just this past weekend. It is Circuit of the Americas, or COTA. We're going to show you the outline of it and how it lays out here. And this is a 20-turn course. This is the longest road course they're going to run this year, correct?
3.42, yep.
Okay. The thing about track limits that NASCAR was dealing with when it came to this particular track last weekend, it didn't have to do with all over the track.
Which made no sense.
It literally had to do with one section of the track. We're going to show you that section here in just a moment. But take a look at this particular course, and then we're going to show you the next courses, because there are a handful, there's 6 of them in total, that the Cup Series specifically is going to be racing on this year. So here's Circuit of the Americas, again, just shy of 3.5 miles long, 20 turns just outside of Austin, Texas. The next one they're going to go to is the aforementioned Sonoma. So as we look at Sonoma out there in the Napa Valley out in California, we start to realize something about this track.
Yep.
The red outline is what NASCAR will use. Now, they have used in the past this area right here, that gray part, that's called the carousel. But for the most part, this is the NASCAR version of it. In this particular case, if you run off the track, if you exceed the track limits, to borrow the phrase, you're really going off the track and you're going into the dirt. And let's face it, if you're off the track and you're into the dirt, you're losing time anyway.
The only asphalt hard surface runoff area at Sonoma is turn 4, turn 7A. You've got a little bit in turn 8, but 11, 12, and there's a little clip going into turn 1. That's it. Everything else is dirt.
And I will say this. I have seen this done in practice or in a race where somebody blew through the S's here and ended up using this particular runoff right here. But look right there. That's a 90-degree corner.
Not going to work.
You're not going to do that at speed, so they have to slow way the heck down. So if they end up blowing the S's right there on that last corner and having to take that, that's a penalty automatically right there against the driver that NASCAR doesn't have to deal with. So there's Sonoma. Next up, we get to go to Chicago. Chicago's a street course. Year number 2 for this. Street courses are kind of tricky.
Whew, that's an understatement.
And if you watched the street course race here last year, this was deluged with a whole lot of rain. Okay? But because they're using actual streets here, they've got a whole lot of temporary walls that have been built up around here.
Yeah, a lot.
There's really no runoff.
Really, the only runoff that you have is turn 1. Turn 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, turn 6.
Yeah.
And that's it, because going into 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12, you're around, there's other city buildings and other city structures that are there. No room for runoff.
Yeah. And what we saw last year is if somebody overshot a corner,
You're in a tire barrier.
you're in a tire barrier.
Right.
And that creates enough damage to your racer at that point in time to where that's pretty much your penalty. You know,
Pretty much,
if you
yeah.
overshoot a corner and you're able to make the curve, but you went wider than what you wanted to, there are people that are diving down below you and taking that corner a lot sharper than you are. Again, that's your own penalty. So Chicago, there's no track limit penalty. Next, we go to Watkins Glen. This will happen in late August, early September.
I think early September.
Okay. There's a couple of different layouts for Watkins Glen as well. This is what NASCAR uses. NASCAR has an area right around here on turn 1 where they generally kind of partially exceed it anyway, because there's a big paved area right here off of turn 1, but you can still overshoot it. And if you go way out here, as opposed to, say, where along these blue lines are, if you go out here to where it's like between the U and the R in turn, you're penalized anyway because you got a whole lot of people that are shooting up under you.
Some people do use that area to use more throttle time and stay a little bit more wide open, but you're taking that wider arc and you're having to cross rumble strips too, so therefore you're scrubbing speed.
Yep.
Leaving the other ones there on the bottom line, the shortest way around the track, gaining more speed. You've got that right there. You've got the chicane, the old classic heritage course, what I
Sure.
call the heritage course.
Right.
There's a straight shot in between 5, 6, 7, and 8. And as he was saying, the penalty is that if you overshoot it, you have to come to a complete stop, then proceed on.
Yep. So if you blow through that, if
Yep.
you have a problem with your braking or whatever, and you can't make that turn, and you go straight and you go right along that line right there, that is technically not shown here on this particular map, yeah, you have to come to a complete stop, and then you start back up. Welcome to your penalty.
Yep. And then you got some little bit more runoff area in turn 9. But from the exit of 9 down to turn 10, you have a pretty decent sized little runoff area, which goes into the old boot course. It's asphalt paved. A lot of people use that, but they can use that all day long.
Sure.
And not be penalized.
Right.
And it's actually faster.
Yeah. And if you shoot it too wide, you're going to hit a wall or tap a wall, and that's going to
Yeah.
create a problem anyway. There's a little bit of asphalt overrun coming off of turn 10,
Yep.
but we see that used all the time, so that's not really a big problem. Turn 11, there ain't much there. There's a wall,
Maybe a groove width, and that's it.
maybe.
Maybe.
So that's Watkins Glen. That'll be October. Then we got one more road course that we're going to be going to, and that is, of course, Charlotte, where they put a road course inside the oval track. Now, remember what we just said about Watkins Glen. Watkins Glen has the bus stop, quote-unquote, chicane. There's actually 2 of those here at the Roval. 11 and 12 up here. And then down here, this 15, 16, 17. Now, the oval track that they're going to run during the Coca-Cola 600, straight shot between 11 and 12, right? You can see where it's drawn in here in a light gray. That's the oval track right there, effectively killing 16 and going straight from 15 to 17. Same thing that at Watkins Glen. You blow through that, or you blow through this one, stop and go. You stop on the track, and then you keep going. That's your penalty. Okay?
That's it.
We've had the luck of being able to go to this particular course. We saw this, and it's actually much more fun than what I gave it credit for. I mean, you and I have been fairly critical about turning an oval into an oval track with a road course in it, but this actually presented pretty well when it came to the racing live and in person, and it does so pretty good on television as well. All of that brings us back to the first track that we showed you, which was the track that NASCAR ran on just this past weekend, Circuit of the Americas. As you look at all of these 20 turns, there is one small area that I have been told about. It's off turn 13 that you actually could use as a potential stop and go, which was not depicted on the map that we showed you just a little bit ago. But there's just one little area that they use. They call it the long course. And it's used mostly right now. Heard this from Justin Marks, who's one of the team owners, one of the co-owners, I should say, of Trackhouse Racing. And he said that when they bring motocross here, supercross, whatever, if a bike goes and exceeds track limits, they'll be told as they're going down the front straight, exceeded track limits, do the long course. They go off 13, they can continue to go on speed, but being the long course, it's a little bit further for them to go. So it's available.
Makes sense.
Okay. Which could be available either for making the cars go down them or giving them an ability to do a stop and go.
Well, you've got, for COTA, I know there's an area off of turn 12. There's an asphalt runoff area off of turn 12. You got that area off of 13 that I know you're talking about. And then there's a strip off of 19 and going into 20 that is an asphalt strip as well. Plenty of area to do a stop and go.
Okay. And that brings us to this.
Yeah.
This was the section that NASCAR was most concerned about when it came to last weekend.
3, 4, 5, and 6.
You could literally go off the track, overshoot the limits of the track at any other portion of the track. But if you did it here, now you incur a penalty. But here's the thing. You blow through the chicanes at Watkins Glen or the Roval, you have to do a stop and go. Every other penalty is pretty much self-inflicted. Here, and you can, because if you look at it, as you're coming down from the angle right here at the bottom of the screen going to the top, technically that's all pavement. All the red paint, the white paint, the blue paint, even the rumble strips that are over there, all of that's pavement. You could technically, if you chose to, do a straight shot and be pavement all the way and not worry about it. Yeah, it'd be a little bumpy, but you could. And you'd gain 2, maybe even 3 seconds. Because
I would
the
say
speed that you can go through that straight versus what you're having to do curve-wise, you're saving at least a second and a half.
I was going to say a second and a half, at least.
So they said, if you cut this, we're going to penalize you. What was the penalty? What was the penalty that even Elton Sawyer, the vice president of competition for NASCAR, saying after the fact said was an extreme penalty?
Be a pass-through. Or if it was at the end of the race, you'd have a 30-second time penalty. Now, on Saturday alone, now I don't know if you caught this one or not, on Saturday alone between the Craftsman Truck Series and the Xfinity Series, you had a total of 37 penalties that were given out just for exceeding track limits. Now, I saw some still shots that they would catch with cameras and show the high-speed cameras and stop it. They were penalizing guys and gals if their tires were literally this much inside of the rumble strips and the S's.
6 inches maybe.
6 inches maybe. Now, you go to turn 8 and 9, you could dip all the way to the dirt. Makes zero sense. If you're going to have track limits that you're going to enforce in the S's part, go full-blown Formula One and go extreme. And if you have 4 tires off of the track at any given point, and it be deemed in an effort to gain time, 6 inches or a foot, I'm telling you, not at this road course, is not going to gain you that much time.
No, it's not.
I mean, I've run it on simulation enough. Trust me, between last year and this year, myself and a handful of Craftsman Truck Series drivers run simulation on iRacing, it's not going to make that much difference over time.
No. But
I'm telling you.
Using what you had said just a moment ago, let's take your Formula One example. Let's go right here. All 4 tires in your Formula One car are inside this rumble strip, this red and white stripe right there. Even at the most extreme, the most I've seen Formula One dock a driver is 5 seconds.
5 seconds.
Maybe 10 if they put all 4 in the blue. But most of them aren't going to go that far. Okay? They're going to keep 2 tires, in this case, the 2 left side tires. They're going to be on that rumble strip. You can get the right side tires up there. As long as your left side tires are on the rumble strip at least, they won't penalize you because they consider that part of the track. But you're penalizing yourself anyway because as rigid as those Formula One cars are,
You're scrubbing speed.
You're scrubbing speed. So you want to keep 2 tires, preferably on the gray. But yeah, the worst I've ever seen is a 5-second penalty from Formula One. Maybe, again, you could do 10 if you really blew it. And there's 2 ways you can serve that. You can either, depending on what part of the race you're in,
right,
when you come down pit road to get a tire change, they don't refuel in Formula One, in case you didn't know. If you come down for a tire change, they'll make you serve that 5 seconds. Either before or after all the work is done, they'll make you sit there without any work being done to your car for an extra 5 seconds before or after the work is done. Mm-hmm. So you can serve it there, or you can wait until the end of the race, and they'll just tack it on to the time that you took to do all of the laps scheduled for that particular race. NASCAR did this to Shane Van Gisbergen on Saturday. At the end of the race, they determined that he had overshot the track limits going through the S's.
By approximately about 4 inches.
Yeah. And they assessed him a 30-second time penalty.
Which is dumb.
It's excessive. Elton Sawyer, you called it extreme. You're being kind to yourself. You really should call it out for what it is. And we're going to call it out for what it is. It's excessive. There's no need for that. There's no precedent for that. You've already got precedent set at these other tracks where it says serve a stop and go. Stop and go easily makes up 4 or 5 seconds. Easily makes up 4 or 5 seconds.
Or even a pass through.
It's a heck of a lot less than a pass through.
Yeah. I mean, and stop and go, but you go and pass through, you're actually pass through, you would gain time.
Yeah.
Because you're still moving. Stop and go, we stop, you have to hold, I think you have to hold like 2 seconds.
Yeah, but
and then go.
At the same point in time, though, when you're on the track and you're dealing with what you're dealing with, as opposed to the length of pit road at a place like COTA.
And the speed you have to go down it.
Yeah. I'm sorry. You're losing a lot more time. You're going to lose probably easily 30 seconds of track time by going at pit road speed all the way that length. A stop and go, I'm sorry, you're not going to lose anywhere near that much time.
In a way, if you look at it, they're taking this to the level that it's apples and oranges. I think that's a fair way to put it. They're taking it to the level of the out of bounds rule at super speedways.
Well, sure.
It's too far. In some cases, it's too far. How can you make when you've got cars or trucks that are, let's say, this average sustained speed of 185? Okay. Talladega and Daytona and Atlanta. Okay. Well, Atlanta, I'm going to say 175.
Yeah. And again, they do have that same rule at Atlanta that they do at Talladega and Daytona. Even though the line's not yellow, yeah, you go below that with the intent to pass, or you force somebody down there, you can actually be penalized for this as well.
Right. It's going to that level because you sit there and think, okay, did he force him? Did he go down below on his own wheel? And you got to make a snap decision. And they were making decisions. I think a couple of them were made laps after it actually happened.
Yeah. And I heard about this later. They had at least 10 people in a separate room with a screen like this using multiple cameras that are pointed at these S's. And that was their job throughout the weekend, was to sit there and look and make sure that no driver exceeded the track limits. That was 10 to 12 people's job.
But you've got a situation where, for example, the Xfinity race on Saturday with Shane Van Gisbergen. You're on the last lap of the race,
Fighting for the win.
fighting for the win. Everything is everything's on the table. All hands on deck. We're going for it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you're trying to go for the win, but you exceeded track limits. Give me a break. Same scenario. And this is where, granted, his driver won the race. This is where there's a disagreement that comes in. 2008 Talladega, Tony Stewart, Regan Smith coming to the win.
Yep.
Regan Smith went down. Some people say he went down on his own. Some people say he got forced down. I'm in the ones that says he was shoved. But it's last lap. Everything goes. If you're going to go out of bounds or out of the track limits, and it's on the last lap, that's on you. But why you got to suffer a penalty when you're trying to go for the win and create one of the most epic finishes in this series history,
Sure.
or the sports history?
Well,
I mean, would they have penalized, for example, Atlanta this year, 3 wide, nose to nose to nose finish?
yeah.
If Ryan Blaney had have had 2 tires dipped below, which coming through the first dog leg he did, what would that have done if they had penalized Ryan? If Ryan Blaney had won the race, but he went below the yellow line to advance his position, we're taking the win away from him.
Riot.
They would have torn the stands down at Atlanta Motor Speedway, taken away from that finish.
Let's look at it from another angle. Let's go back to Talladega or Daytona, for that matter.
Sure.
There are rules that state you can't lock bumpers if you're in the corners.
Trucks and
1 and 2 or
Xfinity.
3 and 4.
Trucks and Xfinity.
Trucks,
yep.
Xfinity, and Cup. The funny thing is that if, for example, I'm following him, I'm pushing Matt throughout the course of the race, and at Talladega, a scheduled 500 miler is a 188 lap race.
But Cup, you can lock bumpers. Trucks and Xfinity, you can't.
But they kind of,
It's a caveat to it.
yeah, they're kind of touchy about it.
By definition.
They're kind of touchy.
But
about
I agree,
it,
yes,
let's
they are
face it.
touchy.
So if I'm pushing Matt on lap 1 to lap 187, I'm going to get warned. And if I continue to do it, they're probably going to say, I'm going to have to serve a pass through or something because it's too aggressive. But on that final lap, that lap 188, after the white flag shows, they're not going to warn me for nothing because literally anything goes.
He's gonna go full scale Tony Stewart. You said what?
Yeah.
I'm not listening to you.
I'm trying to win a race. I see him as my best opportunity to get us out front, and then coming turns 3 and 4, I'm going to try and pull a slingshot move, and let's just see who can drag race to the start-finish line the best. At Talladega, I'm probably going to wait until we get back around to the tri-oval. If I'm at Daytona, it's turns 3 and 4. If I'm at Talladega, starting to go through the tri-oval, I'm going to try and pull a slingshot move, and let's see who can drag race to the start-finish line, and let's go for the win. Mm-hmm. And it's nothing against him. He and I are great friends and have been for a decade now. But I want to win. I know he wants to win too. And that's what it's all about when it comes to racing.
Now, if it's Truck Series or Xfinity, I'm sitting here, and we're just going to use example here. If Molly's spotting me in the race, I'm screaming at Molly, get him off my bumper, get him off my bumper. Push me, don't shove me.
Mm-hmm.
Because by rule in Trucks and Xfinity, the pusher doesn't get penalized. Both vehicles are penalized because you're locked in a tandem.
Yep.
I'm screaming at the top of my lungs, get him off of me. Just push me. Don't lock on to me, because if you lock on to me, you're messing both of us up.
Yep. And the problem with that is, again, we can both be penalized for overly aggressive driving, which could be anything from a pass-through to being docked a lap while we're on pit road for whatever reason. Mm-hmm. Basically, they can park us. And the whole purpose is to try and keep me from locking onto his bumper. And as we go through the corner, it's not just as easy as holding a nice pretty wheel like you're doing 65, 70 down an interstate.
Yep.
You've got a whole lot of forces that are going on. And I just took a ride around Talladega here. Talladega was last repaved in 2007. Mm-hmm. A couple of weekends ago, remember last week during the show, I was wearing an Alabama Wildlife Federation shirt. Wanted to thank them for that. Well, we took pace car rides around there. Thank you to Justin, by the way. Took me out there in the new Mustang that they got out there for this year. I don't know what whether it'll be used. I'm fairly certain it'll be used in the fall. Not sure about the spring.
Yes.
I noticed something as we're going around, and keep this in mind. This is a car that you can go down to your Ford dealership and you can buy. Mm-hmm. Justin has so many laps around Talladega Superspeedway that he was comfortable in a street car doing 135 plus in the corners. You want to take that ride, Molly?
I've done it. I've done it and I've drove it.
Now, here's the other stuff that I noticed. Again, it's been since 2007 since Talladega Superspeedway was paved. I'm noticing the seams are becoming more apparent between the different lanes of asphalt. So that means a sealant. And number two, it's not as glass smooth as it once was. Now, that area where they built that tunnel going into turn 3, still very, very well matched up to the older asphalt. Okay? But there's little undulations that are here, there, and everywhere.
You know it's there.
Yeah. It's getting a personality. It's aging. And if you think that you're going to have your accelerator floored in a Craftsman Truck Series truck, an Xfinity Series car, or for that matter, a Cup Series car, and you're not going to be buffeted around and notice even that much more the little undulations and the little imperfections in the track, you're wrong. It's amplified that much more. So you're not sawing on the wheel like you see some drivers do, and you will this weekend when they're at Richmond. But yeah, you're moving that wheel just a little bit. And if he in the front is moving that wheel, and I behind am being buffeted by the wind from his truck and all the other stuff that's going out there, I'm having to move that wheel, and I've locked into that bumper. All it takes is one thing. If he's not spinning, I am.
If he goes a fraction to the right while I'm turning left in the corner, that's an off-center push. Therefore, I'm getting turned, and I'm probably getting T-boned by 20 other trucks or cars.
And there's a half decent possibility that I could actually turn myself as well, depending on exactly where on the track and the situations going on at that time. Mm-hmm. So there are automatic penalties when it comes to things like that. Here, as we go back to COTA and talk about track limits, I'm having a hard time justifying them running their own penalty that's that severe.
I am as well. You're trying to get too F1 like, if you ask me. You are your own sport. You are your own identity. Now I've heard ever since the race, bring back the turtles, bring back this, bring back that.
That's harder to do, especially with this new Gen 7
Bring back the
car.
curbs. Okay, do we want to have a bunch of loaded up, torn up race cars on haulers coming back up I-20 and I-10 and I-20 headed up from Austin back to Charlotte? Nope.
No, we don't want to do that. These things are very expensive, and as we've noted, when it comes to the bottom of these new Gen 7 Cup cars especially, you get a flat tire, you might be beached.
True.
You put big-time curbing and turtles up there? No. Sorry, you're going to do major damage to the underneath of those cars.
See Indianapolis Road Course 2022.
That's right. And guess what wasn't there last year at the Indianapolis Road Course?
Curbs and turtles.
They were gone. So no, that's not the answer. You've got curbing there, okay? Again, the penalty, should there be a penalty for doing something that could gain you, I don't know, what could you gain going through there by cutting this real short? Half second?
Quarter to a half.
Okay. Make them have a stop and go penalty. That's your precedent. That's NASCAR's precedent. We showed it to you at Watkins Glen. We showed it to you on the Charlotte Roval. Mm-hmm. That's the penalty. If you're shortcutting the track for any particular purpose, and let's face it, that would be that reason to go there and go off track limits or exceed track limits would be to shorten your time. There's your penalty. There's your precedent. Where they came up with this idea that they needed to do a pass-through penalty through the pits, which causes you 5-6 more times the amount of time to go down than it would to be a stop and go, I'm sorry, I'm not buying it.
But you enforce it in one part of the racetrack and don't enforce it in the other ones. Where the other ones you're not enforcing it at, you could gain more time. You could realistically gain more time there if you would be here.
We've called for two things from NASCAR when it comes to this. And NASCAR's not the only one. We've called it for IndyCar. We've called it for Formula One. We've called it for Formula E. We've called it for the NHRA. Heck, we've called it for the Superstar Racing Experience, which I hope they bring back. And if the IROC Series, Ray Evernham's able to get that back up and running later this year or next year, and he's got inconsistencies, we'll call him out as well. Be consistent and be transparent. When it comes to your rulings, whether it's the ruling on race day or ruling after the fact because you realize that one car didn't pass post-race inspection and you announce your penalties on Tuesday or Wednesday of that next week, do us all a favor. Be consistent in it. You know, if I have the same problem that Matt does, but Matt gets a bigger penalty than I do, why? It's the exact same problem.
Or vice versa.
Yeah.
You know.
It doesn't matter how that would work out. If the two of us had the exact same problem in two different races, but for some reason he got a bigger level penalty, why? Inconsistency. Be consistent. You've already set your precedent. Be consistent in your rulings. That's all we ask, NASCAR.
Yep.
And again, we ask the same for Formula One. We ask the same for IndyCar. I mean, Fernando Alonso's penalty, which dropped him down to 8th place because of the possibility of dangerous driving. Well, either he was driving dangerously on that last lap, which caused George Russell to have a problem, or Fernando Alonso wasn't driving dangerously, and George Russell just messed up.
I'm going to say option B on that one, Bob. George Russell messed up.
But what now is what is Formula One suddenly doing? They're suddenly trying to channel Tom Cruise in Minority Report?
I can't figure this one out because F1 has gotten so tic-tac on how somebody races who. Now, I get you're in an open-wheel car, and if you touch somebody wrong or whatnot, yeah, there's going to be some damage, serious damage that happens to one car, the other, or both. I get that. But for the love of humanity and mankind, this is, as Sir Jackie Stewart said it, this is motor racing. This is, by definition, a contact sport. Now, intentional contact or incidental contact is two different things. You're going to have unintentional contact and you're going to have intentional contact. Incidental, intentional. That's what I should have said. The intentional contact is where you draw the line. Incidental contact, let it go.
Or potentially dangerous driving. I mean, what? Am I supposed to think ahead that, I don't know, Molly might do something in post-show editing and therefore I need to smack the back of her hand with a ruler?
No.
Why would I do that if I didn't know that she was actually going to do something bad? You know, we'll talk about that later if I realize there's a problem. I'm not smacking the back of her hand with a ruler either. What am I, a Catholic nun?
But if you make it to F1, if I'm driving the 10 Alpine car and Steve's in the 44 Mercedes car, see what I did with that there?
I like that.
He's in that car right there, and he and I are just racing the ever-loving daylights out of each other. Hard racing. Would you think either one of our spouses would want to see come through the ticker, incident report, notated hard racing between car 44 and car 10?
Hard racing, isn't that kind of what we're supposed to be doing? Is
you get paid to drive the ever-loving daylights out of these cars and push them to their limits.
Yeah. And what's more entertaining? The fact that Matt could have a 20-second lead over me from first to second place, or that Matt and I are battling for position, whatever position it might be, but we're side by side for the better part of a full lap. What's more entertaining to you?
And say we're at Abu Dhabi racing, the final race of the year, we're going for the championship. Do the people that are in the stands want to see either him or me dusting everybody and leading by 20, to 25 to 30 seconds like we've seen that Red Bull car do a lot here lately.
Too much.
Except we now know he's human. Or would they rather see us swapping position, racing each other hard lap after lap after lap, and we're coming down to the last lap, and our crews have told us, hey, last lap, let's go. And we're nose to tail, side by side, and we come off the last turn, and we're shooting down the front stretch, and we're just side by side in a full-scale drag race. Do you think they're going to stand up for that or stand up for either one of us that's dusting the field? They're going to stand up for us racing nose to nose, race to the line.
So that's the lesson for the day, boys and girls. We are simply asking for consistency in the rulings here. Again, note that you have a precedent set at a couple of different tracks already for exceeding track limits or whatever you want to call it, NASCAR, and understand that because you have that already in place, you already had the penalty set. Why make a separate one at COTA? Then you do at Watkins Glen or at the Charlotte Roval or at literally any other track you've got. You blew it, NASCAR. Mm-hmm. Get it right. This is a fantastic facility. It is a world-class facility. NASCAR should be running there. In fact, every single American motorsports series should be figuring out a way to run at COTA.
Should.
IndyCar did it a couple of times. Why they're not still, I don't know.
I don't either, but the race that they had there was great.
This is a world-class facility. It's FIA Tier 1, graded top of the line, which you have to be able to race Formula One. NASCAR puts on a great show here. IndyCar put on a great show there. Formula One puts on a great show there. We've seen sports cars there before. Heck, the Australian Supercar Series pulled all of their cars up here and ran at COTA in the past. We've seen sports cars do it, F1, NASCAR, IndyCar, motorcycles do it. It's a great facility. Technically, NASCAR doesn't have a contract with COTA past this year. I hope they work on it to get back there in 2025 because this is a wonderful facility and this is where we should be. And Austin, Texas is a great market. It's a great facility. People want to go to it. Heck, 400,000 people plus turned the turnstiles for the F1 race last fall. I don't know how many people were there, but the stands were packed at the Cup race.
If you ask me, I'd rather go to Austin than go to Dodger Stadium. Just saying.
But get it right. Again, penalty precedent has been set. Use that one. Find a place on that track and make them do that. Don't make them do a pass-through penalty. Way too much. Way too excessive. Use the wrong word, Elton Sawyer. You said it was extreme. No, it was excessive. Get it right. Coming up this weekend, we're going to review all of this. We'll talk a little bit about this and all the other series that we cover when we go into the full version of the Championship Racing Network, which, again, you can catch on CRN Live. We hope that you do that Saturday morning, 8 to 10 a.m. Central Time. And next week, a little bit of a special deal. He's going out of town on Wednesday when we usually do this. So we're going to do a special Tuesday edition of Crossed Flags. Hope you join us then. Until then, we'll talk to you Saturday and next Tuesday.
You've been listening to Crossed Flags, a racing podcast. For more content like this, subscribe to CRN Live on YouTube, and you'll be set to catch the 2-hour live show every Saturday morning at 9 Eastern, 8 Central.
This has been a presentation of the Championship Racing Network.